Hello, my name is Nancy Steffen-Fleur, and I'm the director of the Murray Center for Women in Technology. And on behalf of the Murray Center, I want to welcome you to the 16th Lillian Gilbreth Colloquium, which is part of this month's Women's History Month celebration. This year's colloquium is being co-sponsored by a whole host of partners from across the university, including the Technology and Society Forum Committee, thanks to Jay, the Albert Dorman Honors College, which is a lot of people were in the room, including Paul, who's somewhere over there, and the Department of Physics, where's Robbie, and the Department of Electrical and Computer Engineering and Sigma Psi. I also want to acknowledge additional support from Jack Gentle, the Interim Vice President of Academic and Student Services, and Sunil Segal, the Dean of the Newark College of Engineering, and to acknowledge that as well the help of the Murray Center staff, in particular Talina Knox and Fran Sears, in planning the event and ensuring that we do indeed have cookies and juice and PowerPoint. Before we introduce today's speaker, I'd like to say a few words about the extraordinary woman for whom the colloquium series is named, the first female professor to teach at the Newark College of Engineering, Dr. Lillian Moller Gilbreth. Lillian Gilbreth is the most famous person ever associated with this university, and yet she's famous for all the wrong reasons. If I told you that she is the mother in the book and films Cheaper by the Dozen, there's a chance at least that you'd know who I was talking about. And I bet your parents would anyhow. If I told you that she's also the author of Concrete System, Motion Study for the Disabled, Psychology of Management, and 14 other pioneering books in industrial engineering, you might not recognize who I'm talking about. Cheaper by the Dozen celebrates Gilbreth and made her immortal, particularly immortal for having and raising 12 kids, but at the cost of erasing all traces of her intellectual and technological importance. NJIT's Gilbreth Colloquium is designed to correct this record, to rewrite this pioneering engineer back into her own life story, and in the process to make visible the wide-ranging contributions that many other women have made and are still making to science and technology over the years. Today, we're just beginning to recognize that the most important scientific and technological research necessarily takes place at the interfaces of disciplines. Lillian Gilbreth actually understood that in 1911. She was a brilliant systems thinker. She could put things together across disciplines. She was able to see connections across disparate fields. She was the first to integrate psychology and industrial engineering, and in particular, she refocused the attention of engineers on the human element in work. If Lillian Gilbreth could be with us now, she would undoubtedly be delighted by our choice of speaker for today's event, Dr. Santosh Kurinec, a professor of microelectronic engineering from the Rochester Institute of Technology, who teaches in a school of engineering named for one of Gilbreth's own contemporaries, another pioneering engineer and businesswoman, Kate Gleason. At this point, I want to call on Murray Center Assistant Director Talina Knox to make a formal introduction of our speaker.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us this afternoon. I'm especially excited for our speaker this afternoon, who has been a pleasure to meet and talk to so far today, and talking about creativity in engineering education. The title of this afternoon's talk is Paving the Way to a Smarter World, Creativity in Engineering Education. And for all of our students, engineering, science, and technology students here today, I'm sure that's something you could appreciate, creativity in your learning of engineering. So please let me formally introduce our speaker to you, Santosh Kurinec. And once again, she's from the Department of Microelectronic Engineering at the Kate Gleason College of Engineering at Rochester Institute of Technology. Kurinec is a professor of electrical and microelectronic engineering at RIT and a visiting scholar at IBM's T.J. Watson Research Center in New York. Prior to joining RIT, she was assistant professor of electrical engineering at Florida State University, Florida A&M University College of Engineering in Tallahassee. Her research interests include photovoltaics, non-volatile memory, and advanced integrated circuit materials and processes. Try to say that 10 times, right? So without further ado, please we welcome Santosh Kurinec. Please come to the podium. Thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Thank you for being here. First of all, I must thank the Center for Women in Technology at NJIT and all the organizations, units that have sponsored this colloquia today. And when I was reading about the history of this colloquia, I was really overwhelmed by the previous speakers who have come here and spoken to you, and they have raised the standard very high for me. So I'm extremely humbled. My special thanks to the committee for inviting me. It's been a pleasure right now, up until now, and I'm looking for a great thrill after the event. I particularly thank Dr. Ravindra for inviting me and making my arrangement to come here and being persistent and helping me out. That has been wonderful. So it gives me a great pleasure to honor such an incredible lady engineer that first taught here at Newark, Lillian Gilbreth. So her biography is very inspiring, and when I read that, and I said, what an honor for me to be here to speak in her memory. Now, as I was introduced, I come from another institute of technology, about 350 miles from here, northwest, in the town Rochester. Now, Rochester is not such a small town, but it's upstate New York. So we have similar situation like New Jersey had at one time, when the iconic Bell Labs started to shrink, and you have experienced that in this region. And we are experiencing in Rochester now, when the iconic Eastman Kodak is shrinking in size. So that's all the more reason, excuse me, for us engineers and younger people to come up and build more Bell Labs and build more Eastman Kodaks. So that's what we have to be working on. Now, let me again give my own tribute to these two women engineers. Lillian Gilbreth, as you just introduced, she combined psychology with engineering and was a realist system engineer and left a legacy that we should all respect. And College of Engineering at RIT named its engineering college after the name of Kate Gleason. Kate Gleason was the first engineering woman who enrolled in Ithaca in Cornell University and took some courses at RIT at that time in Sibley College of Mechanics. That was the old name for RIT. And there is a contrast between the two women engineers, as she mentioned. Lillian Gilbreth, a super mom of 12 children, and Kate Gleason never had a family and never married. So when you look at these two extremes of personal situations, so I can't fit any one model to it. So that means everybody is unique in this world. So we all have our unique assets, which we are going to discuss as we move on. Again, to introduce myself, I come from upstate New York and Rochester Institute of Technology. So I'll zoom you in to my lab, and that's what we do. We have a clean room where we build integrated circuits. So we teach how these devices are miniaturized and built, and we are serving the semiconductor industry worldwide. So these programs of microelectronic engineering started about 30 years ago. We are celebrating 30th anniversary. So we have placed about 1,200 engineers all across the world, whether it's US or Pacific Rim or Europe and Asia. So our students are working in this field. And I would say that any integrated circuit product that you have in your hand today, one of our students has had a hand in it, either in design, manufacture, testing, or development. So with that introduction, I will move on to outline of my today's presentation. So when I go to a classroom, when I talk to young students like you, I always tell them that you are to move ahead in future, but always look back where we came from and where we are heading to. We are not just born today. The science and technology that you have today, it was not built in a day. Rome was not built in a day. It has a history to it. When we look back, we realized that what problems came across and how we solved them, and in the future, how we'll solve the future problems. So I'll talk about engineering accomplishment, vision for the future, and what are the grand challenges in front of us. We'll look at the roadmaps, what kind of roadmaps we have to follow. If we don't have a roadmap, we are going to create our own roadmaps. So you are young people, you will go ahead and make the roadmaps, and you find the way. And how education will help us create and follow those roadmaps. That's what I talk about. I'll also mention about, since today we are particularly inspiring women into engineering, which is a lost workforce up until now, and we are working hard to get more, to fill up the gender gap in engineering. So I'll say a few words about that, how we can bring some inspiration to women to join engineering curricula, and of course, overall, US needs a lot more engineers than we have today. So we have to work on that. And some thoughts about looking forward. So the greatest engineering accomplishments of last century, so if I tell you about the last 20th century, this is from National Academy of Engineering. So if you look at read this, I'm not going to read all these particular list here, but we can say that we have done a lot in electrification, automobile, aviation, health care, disease control. We have wiped out many diseases from the surface of the earth, including smallpox and polio. We have worked on electronic devices that has given us the internet. So I'll speak more about that as we go on forward. But the biggest achievement that I can think of is landing man on the moon in 1969, because that was the first time that a human eye could look at the earth as a planet, as a one unit, as a one system. So that gives us now to make our planet smarter. So that's why I chose my topic today. How do we make the world smarter? Of course, the Smart Planet initiative comes from IBM because they have already announced that, but it has almost become an engineering theme today, that how do we make the world smart, intelligent and connected and communicating. So since I'm here in New Jersey, the place which is really has a pride in being close proximity of Bell Labs. So the Bell Labs have left a legacy not only to this place, but to the entire world. So this article came in New York Times last month, and I think it's a fascinating article. I suggest all my students to read it, because that tells us the importance of national laboratories, research laboratories. Bell Labs have given us so much. As you read, it's an interactive map. If you can go on to newyorktimes.com and you can click the Bell Labs article, and it gives you the history. All major inventions which were done in the Bell Labs, we are taking the fruit of those today. We have phones, space exploration, we have the internet, we have all your music system that you use, all the communications, entertainment, and television and graphics, so whatnot. So I believe that the legacy of Bell Labs should keep on inspiring this place, if not the whole universe. So let's look quickly. Since I know students are taking some time to be here in my colloquium, I want to make I'll do a quick slideshow of looking back in last 3 centuries in maybe in 3 minutes. So 1 minute a century maybe, that kind of rate. So when I teach electromagnetic fields to my students or physics to my students, and I say, okay, let's see, you use Coulomb's law, you use Ampere's law, but just gaze at the image of these people. They were just young people like you when they discovered all these things. So reading the history of science is one thing that inspires students. So my appeal would be that for all college and science and engineering, a small segment of history of science will be a very good idea, because that tells us where we came from. There was one day one student came to me and he asked me, while I was teaching electromagnetic fields, I can't visualize electromagnetic waves. Can you suggest me a nice software, computer software, which I can think about E and H vector and how they travel? And I asked him one question. Did Maxwell had that software? So that's something that's really important, that we have to stretch our imagination as much as we can so that we can discover new things. So what Maxwell did was it connected the fundamental laws discovered by Coulomb, Gauss, Ampere, and Faraday, and connected them and predicted the velocity of light for the first time. And that gave us the whole electromagnetic spectrum, and then we started to work with it. So that was a great invention at that time, followed by looking into Ohm's law, the circuits, and that led to discovery of electron by the turn of the century by Sir J.J. Thomson. And once we got a charge, a matter charge in our hand, we measured its value. I know you did some experiment today. I was looking at one of your labs. Your students were measuring E charge to mass ratio of electrons. So that was measured so many years ago, centuries ago, that we know. And then came the idea of Edison started to use filament. They emit electrons, so now I can make the light bulbs. From light bulbs, we made intelligent tubes. That came the vacuum tubes. Once we got the vacuum tubes, we could control current and voltage. So we started to make radio, and we communicated. And radio connected the whole Earth in 40 years. It took radio 40 years to connect the whole globe. It took 10 years to connect the whole globe via television, and it took 4 years to connect via the internet. So this is how the connectivity comes. Inventors of electric power systems. So you see all these brilliant scientists and engineers who created, generated power, transmitted it, distributed it, stored it, and today we have such powered planet. We take light for granted. We take transportation for granted. But these were the people who were working under difficult circumstances and inventing these things. So to all young people, I say that if you read what kind of lifestyle they had, we are a lot better off from that point of view. If we have the same curiosity they had, you can imagine how far we will go. Michael Faraday was a bookbinder in his teenagers. He was binding books in a library. It was a boring job, but he didn't call it boring. He kept studying, and he discovered electromagnetic induction. So this is how he used his time. So I think that's amazing. Look at the telephone, from Alexander Graham Bell to the smartphones you have in your pockets. We've gone a long way, the history of communication. The television, from 3D, it has become 2D in size, but 3D in displays. So you have exotic televisions, so that has brought us to the entertainment of the world today. While we were doing all that, we were also computing. We started Boolean algebra way back in 1816, and all the Newmans and the Shannon, then Anastov gave us the ENIAC computer. Now this is a wonderful picture. I like it a lot. You're talking about intellectual density. Imagine the brain power sitting in this particular picture. This I took from Wikipedia. It's from the Solvay conference picture, where all these famous quantum mechanics were sitting down. You see Madame Curie sitting here, so I'm very proud of her. And when you look at that, now you can imagine what Bohr and Born and Einstein and Brillouin are sitting and talking. What kind of discussion must be going on at that time? So that inspires a lot. So when I teach quantum mechanics, I show this picture to students. They take it a little bit more seriously. And once what we did with quantum mechanics, at one time Heisenberg uncertainty principle seemed to be very hypothetical, very fantasy land, but no, when Einstein showed that incoming photons will emit electrons, photoelectric effect, he got Nobel Prize for that. That was the beginning of using photons to do something for us, and led to the discovery of lasers. So look what lasers are doing for us today. And communications, eye surgery, everything. Lasers are LEDs, laser lighting. So, and we are still interested in what elementary particles are doing. So Hadron Collider is up there to do some fundamental research on elementary particles. And some of the inventions for Hadron Collider may solve our energy problem in the future when we understand about fusion energy, once we learn about these particles. Lighting. In Stone Ages, we used to light using fire. Then, of course, we got the light bulb, the incandescent, fluorescent, discharge lamps. Now we are using LEDs or light-emitting diodes. And since LED requires gallium nitride or some exotic materials, we are looking at organic LEDs. And now New Jersey has a great company that's working on organic lighting system. So pretty soon, we will have organic lighting system which will be efficient and also energy sustainable. The junction transistor came from your backyard, which is again one of the outstanding discoveries of solid state device that started the integrated circuit revolution, led by, of course, the three great scientists from Bell Labs, Shockley, Bardeen, and Walter Hauser in Britain. And Jack Kilby took it to integrated circuit level. He got Nobel Prize in year 2000 for IC. And then came the Moore's law. We started putting more and more devices into one chip. Today we have 30 billion transistors on one chip. That's why you have devices which run so fast. So we are actually in 22 nanometer node. The smallest man-made feature is 22 nanometers using photolithography, using simple digital printing. And this means that we can build now devices. Now, you'll be surprised at the throughput of these devices. We are building on 400 millimeter wafers, so of the size of a large pizza. And we make so many wafers 24/7 in fabs, which are almost like science fiction these days. So millions and millions of these devices are made with a reliability of 99.999%. That's why your computers are so cheap. So there's a lot of manufacturing revolution that took place to realize these computer devices that we use today. So Moore's law told us that the number of transistors would double almost every year. And that race has kept on going. So this is one thing that's driving the innovation of today. We're almost down to the wire. So we started making devices so small that now we have to build devices on silicon nanowires. So we come to the nanowire level. So our physics is changing, our technology is changing, and this is challenging a lot of young people to take on science and challenges. Moore's law for graphic processor. Look at the imaging has improved. You still remember those old video games you may have in your garage somewhere, the old Ataris, the Nintendos, and came the Xbox, and now you have some exotic video games. They almost look realistic, and you have movies looking three-dimensional these days. So that Moore's law has inspired that. The internet and social media. This is a graph which one of my students and myself, we sat down and made it, and we like this graph a lot. It tells us, so while they change the bulb, so we are just saying that as technology develops, the adjacent technologies also develop. We had the good communication system, and we started to go worldwide. We started to doing commerce, and now we are doing social networking using the internet. And that has given rise to thousands and thousands of jobs all across the world. So the key lesson here is, looking back in the history, we have observed that there were dedicated engineers and scientists. They were doing these things for us, which we are using today. So now you all have to think that what do we do today for the generations to come tomorrow. The first PN junction solar cell was also built in the vicinity. It was in April 26, 1954. It came in the New York Times on almost the front page that we have found a device that can solve world's energy problem. But somehow we didn't invest on solar cells at that time because we had some easy source of energy. But now we are feeling the energy crunch, and therefore mega plants are being built around the world. These plants are to the capacity of gigawatts, and now you can imagine how much workforce this particular effort will generate if we commit ourselves to using solar energy. So solar energy in many parts of the world has reached grid parity. That means the amount of money you are spending on traditional source of energy is going to compete with solar cells, and then there'll be craze to build more and more big plants like that. So that means we'll be needing engineering workforce for these. Once we get such big energy resources connected, and we have a very nice internet revolution going on, we'll connect the two. That's called smart energy. So all energy sources around the world will be connected smartly. So if one part of the world is using the energy, the other part is storing the energy. Imagine half the earth is sleeping while half the earth is awake. So you can redistribute solar energy resources by connecting and storing and making it smart. So while you're not at home, your home is smartly connected to your iPhone or iPad, so you can control your energy consumption. That means we are going to the era of a lot of connections. So looking ahead, the vision for 21st century is, according to Semiconductor Research Corporation, that every person has easy access to all the accumulated knowledge of human race, anytime, any place, any format, any language. Now imagine the connectivity, imagine the bandwidth required. Every person can interact with any other person, any place, any time. Virtual commerce through cashless, paperless transactions. Virtual transportation, intelligent highways. Limitless individual and public entertainment options. You can watch movies from home on demand, or go to theater, or go anywhere, anytime you want. So every person has easy access to comfort, dignity, and health. So if this kind of vision when you look at, then what kind of engineers or scientists and jobs we are going to create. So that's what we have to look at. These are the grand challenges by National Academy of Engineering listed that you all have to solve, or we all have to solve. Making solar energy economical. So think of novel ideas. How can I make better solar cells, better system? Provide energy from fusion. A lot of research is going on some special laboratories. How do we capture carbon and not contaminate the climate? And there's a lot of sustainability and climate control. Health informatics. We are going to store all the health data on the net. And prevent terror. So you want to be safe and secure. Secure your cyber structures. So therefore, you have to work on cyber security. So all these challenges we have to face in the coming decades. So there's a company, Ericsson, they have come up with a new white paper which says that they have started their work on 50 billion connected devices. So imagine now 3 billion subscribers which can have information 24 hours typically, and they have 5 to 10 devices which are connected. So imagine how much connections you would need. Your cars, your appliances, your computers, they're all connected, and that's called 50 billion connected devices. So the future cell phones will do a lot more than they do today. The future cars will be a lot more smart than they can find parking spot, they can self-park, they can. So all those trends are going to happen because human beings always believe if something can be done, it will be done. So that's what IBM motto is. It's called Towards a Smart Planet. So now all the dots which are listed here, that means all these aspects of human life will be instrumented, intelligent, and interconnected. That every tool will have a sensor and a decision maker intelligent device. So that makes it very challenging. So what kind of engineers will we need for this kind of exponential growth? We need engineers, particularly I'll focus here on few things which are very important. Interact across disciplines, very important for engineers to do that. And of course, go on to cellular level, so understand cell biology because we are going to connect our biological functions also with interconnected devices. We have to compete globally, very important. So when I tell my students, there are say 20, 30 students in a class, I say you're not competing with each other. You're competing with your peers all across the world. They are smarter, there may be smarter people elsewhere. So always, choose your peers. They are all around the world. So that's very important because you have to compete globally. Jobs go where people are. Jobs go where educated people are. So we have to compete globally. We should be able to use modern tools. So therefore, hands-on lab experience is very good. We have to teach public. So you have to do some social work, talk to kids in schools, talk to public servants, and also inform public policy. Make sure that some of you also take the role of public policy and maybe become leaders. How many engineers are in our Congress today? So we have to send more scientists and engineers in US Congress because they will take decisions that we want them to take. So that's very important. So only if we talk to public policy people, you talk to your senator, congressman, your local town representatives to tell them the value of engineering and sciences. The skill set which will be needed for 21st century engineers are in a very illustrated article reference given here by Borgona. Sustainable development, avoiding environmental harm, energy, materials efficiency. Life cycle and infrastructure creation and renewal. How do I build system which will last long or how they can be repaired? Micro nanotechnology and micro electromechanical system because every device will have MEMS device that will be interconnected. Mega system, think big. We will be making big things. And smart system. Imagine when you go to Hoover Dam, what comes to your mind? It's huge, it's humongous, somebody made it. When you go to Kennedy Space Center, just look at Saturn V rocket. It's longer than this, and when you look at it, it looks like a huge system, somebody built it. So the future challenges will be to make those big things. So think big also. So all the students should think about some plans like there's a very interesting energy, we call it science fiction like of a program that once NASA had it in mind. that we'll put massive spacecraft in the space with solar panels. They will take the energy from the sun and beam down as a microwave radiation on Earth. The price tag to that project was $10 billion in those times. But if you see, if that particular project went somewhere, it will be a game-changing thing. So always think about game-changing things, not just incremental improvement, but big dreams. How can we do such great things in the future? Beyond the strong foundation in fundamentals such as science, math, and engineering, the engineers would need a lot more things, which I'll just list something. Engineering science with analytical capacity, system integration, how to synthesize information that you learned, problem solving, not always prescriptive education. Don't always expect your instructor will give you a question and there'll be one answer to it. But your instructor may give you a question, there'll be many answers, we'll pick up the best. So those are called design problems or non-prescriptive problems. We should be able to solve those. And of course, the list goes on, but what I have added the one in the red, because our program is very much related to the industry, and I always talk to my employers of my students, what kind of skills do you want to see in our graduates? The first thing they tell me, they want design of experiments. They want students to be able to design experiments, and they want students to do data mining, because every equipment in the industry is connected to a lot of data. There's huge amount of data comes out if you have a system you're measuring, whereas in our universities, we don't have that kind of data. So our students are not used to lots of data and analyzing information out of it. But in the industry, for example, you have a wafer. When you scan a wafer for, say, oxide thickness, it will give you a massive chart of oxide thickness on so many wafers. Then how do you mine the data? How do you get the information from a data? So that's very important. So statistical process control is very important, that how do you get reliability high? If you make something, you should make something at a low cost, economic and sustainability issues. So these are some of the things that we should somehow integrate in engineering education. It will interest students and it will make them very job employable. Another thing that's coming to our challenge is there's exponential growth of knowledge. Knowledge is increasing, almost doubling every year. When that happens, how do we teach in the same 4 years the new knowledge? How do we teach new knowledge? What do you eliminate? What do you add? So what kind of material we should not teach? What kind of material we should compress? So therefore, there'll be knowledge compression in the future. But once you have compressed knowledge, how do you access the knowledge? And how do you process the knowledge? And how do you bring the creativity? So that's where you have a lot of work to do for us educators too. How do we teach so much of knowledge in such short amount of time? So therefore, we have to find different ways. So that means we'll teach our students how to access information, how to access correct information. If I tell you to find something on the web, you will go to so many websites, but are they good website? Are they peer reviewed? Are they good? So where do you access the information? And once you access the information, how do you present to your manager? That's also important. Now this is a new report that has come from White House Science and Technology Council, and this is the latest data that we have just got. It was published just last month. In 2004, US had 1.49 million engineers in the workforce. In 2010, we have 1.55 million. So the increase is there, but not as much as we would have liked. And you can see some of the states' distribution here. And the highest percentage of engineers in the workforce have been in the places where there's automobile or aircraft manufacturing. The Boeings and the GMs and all, those are the areas that have more jobs. And so this shows that where we are lacking in terms of jobs. As far as PhDs are concerned, in 1997, we have 517,000 PhDs, and we increased by 25% by 2008. Now, this increase in PhD is a lot more than the increase in the workforce. The reason for that was we outsourced manufacturing jobs, and we imported a lot of, our university system is so good, we kept on importing students to do PhDs here. And so that was the reason we increased. Plus, USA announced National Nanotechnology Initiative in 2000 that generated a lot of PhDs in that field. The fear of outsourcing is also preventing our students to take engineering disciplines because they think that most of the jobs are outsourced. Most of the things are made in China or Pacific Rim, or most of the IT work is done in India. And there was a special report here which says that the for US to stay ahead, it should create more dynamic engineers, because the jobs which are rote and repetitive, those are the jobs which are outsourced the most. And we have left those jobs long ago. So we have to create more dynamic engineers, but at the same time, you can't have dynamic engineers unless you have manufacturing in your backyard. So we have to keep some manufacturing here in the country. So that means we have to work on the technology programs, getting students from community colleges, and asking the companies to produce here. You must have heard recently the chief executive of Starbucks, Howard Schultz. He said on national TV, on CNN, that so Starbucks decided to make the mugs, the ceramic mugs, in the US. They didn't want to import from outside. But US had lost all production companies that made ceramic mugs. Can you imagine that? So all the furnaces were dead. So he found one company in Ohio which had some dormant capability to make those ceramic mugs. So Starbucks is investing on the company, and the future Starbucks mugs will be made in USA. So that employs the middle level engineering staff. So once you get to that, maybe the ceramic mugs will become smarter in the future. They will sense the temperature, they will talk to you, and so you can put some innovation there. The history of outsourcing actually began in 1800s when US started to ask Scotland to build the sailing ships because they could make better sails. That was way back in 1800. But the real outsourcing started after World War II, when the United States wanted to rebuild Japan and Europe after the World War II destruction that happened there. So all the textiles were exported to Japan, and eventually all the electronics was TVs and VCRs and all those VHS tapes, everything was exported to Japan. Then in 1970s, looking at Japan's success, Chinese government opened the country's door to global trade. So we started to send some more jobs to China, making everything repetitive things to China. Then electronics outsourcing to China gave us the computer and the internet. And in 1980, Silicon Valley was booming with IT revolution. And we needed a lot of IT engineers, and there were no IT engineers in the US enough to meet Silicon Valley's demand. So everything went to India, because India was focusing on math and sciences at that time. So that was, so from 80s to 2000, those 2 decades, I call them lost decades. We did not invest in education at that time. Most of the jobs went away. So that is the reason for the education, lack of education helped us to export jobs. And other things that helped us, by exporting the jobs, we improved the broadband, the internet, the data storage, and that also facilitated more exporting the jobs. So we had, from 1980s to 2000, we didn't produce enough engineers to meet the demands of the Silicon Valley. So what I want to say now is, as the time goes to 2018, you see here, these different bars are telling us from 1983 to 2018. So as you see the degree requirements, the jobs for high school dropouts and associate degrees and high school graduates will decline drastically. So for every job, you perhaps would have at least some university degree. So the future job growth will demand that everybody should be at least a Bachelor of Science engineer, and then masters and PhDs. So the technology is becoming so complex that you need educated workforce. So we have to invest in education. So this also data shows that the STEM education will account for about 44% of STEM education will be bachelor degree workforce, and 28% will be masters. So by 2018, you should all be doing bachelors and masters, and maybe PhDs and later on to be in the workforce. So we hope to have 762 million jobs by year 2018. So I give you one example. This is the microelectronic fab where we make the computer chips, the Intel and the IBMs and the Micron, those companies which are building the chips. And these are the engineers working. The hierarchy of hiring in these exotic laboratories, they pay very well, but these are the hierarchy: fab manager, maintenance manager, production manager. And today, this is the education arrow, I call it. That means to be at different positions in the fab, these are the degrees you need. Your associate, high school plus, associate, technology, BS and MS, so this arrow. But as the time goes, the arrow is sinking. So that means more and more normal middle level jobs would require master's degree. So this shows that we need education to be, because some of these machines, these machines are millions dollars machines. They have a lot of data coming out, so you need very educated workforce to work there. So that's why education is so important. And the gender gap in engineering education is alarming. We have amongst engineering degree, the 18% are women compared to 48% workforce for men. And same gap, whereas in physical sciences, women outnumber men. So this shortage of women into engineering is something that many of the engineering community and the centers here are addressing that, because that's a workforce we need more engineers. So we need more men and women. So I don't mean we only need women, we need more engineers. So we go to community colleges, we go to minority institutions to get more to hire. If you want to rebuild, you want to make smart planet, you have to come into science and engineering. So the gender gap in women in STEM education comes from various factors. One of the factors is that primarily we have choices, how much time you can take off from your work if you're raising a family, so which is very understandable. And the legacy had been that women have been homemaker, and now they are economically emancipated, so they want to strive to more career-oriented professions, and which will take some time to blossom, and that's understandable. And also people say that there are less or there are few female STEM role models, so that's why the colloquia that you are doing is trying to help women students. They see you can be successful like others have been. We also stereotype women into engineering many times. That reminds me of an old statement. One time I was working in my PhD in my lab. I was doing some measurements on a LCR bridge, inductance measurements, very complicated measurements we were doing as a function of frequency. And one of my male graduate students came to me and said, let me do the measurement, you make a coffee for me. So, but that statement was very interesting. I mean, I at that time didn't even hear it, I mean, I didn't register it. I heard it, but I didn't register it because not every battle has to be fought. But I can understand that this is a mindset. Maybe the student didn't really mean it, but we are so conditional. We say some things impulsively. So if you work it out, no problem. So I didn't give up on that. I kept on measuring. And so that's something that I'll tell all women students. Nobody can discriminate you without your consent. So always believe in that, So here is technology empowers women. So that's why women should be very friendly to technology. Today, technology has given clean cooking, mobility, communication, healthcare, safety. If you have a cell phone in your pocket, if you're alone on the road, you're not afraid. 911 call will save you, So it's a very, technology empowers you. You're in a car, you are driving, you feel quite good. You have a computer, you can connect to your fellow, and you can call home anytime you want to. So that's what I feel women should always feel, that technology has empowered them. So they should empower technology now. So that's why they should come to the workforce. So this is a very nice study done with the reference given below, that in the countries where women enjoy economic freedom, the people are generally happier there. So happiness index is based upon women's economic status. So therefore, it's important that we encourage them to seek higher education, so the economic standard, and they can strive for their ambition. They want to be somebody. They want to serve the society. So I am a member of Women in Engineering from IEEE. There's a Women in Engineering magazine. I would like you to subscribe to that, especially the center here. They have very interesting articles. And so what I want to show you here, the IEEE has done a good job. The IEEE fellow position is very competitive to get. So you see here, the women applications have gone up with some change somewhere. And this success rate for women in 2011 was 55%. 55% of women fellow nominations were selected. And it's very competitive. There's no quota for women. It's all based on competition. So you see that it's increasing. There are more women who are becoming IEEE fellows. The National Science Board 2012 report is out, and there's a reference here. It says that the major global science and technology trends are market liberalization, interconnected world economy, knowledge-intensive economies, and global corporate structures. So we are all in this planet together. We all have to compete, and we'll all have to coexist. Now, the first university degrees in the region and country, I will just focus on the engineering on the bottom left-hand corner circle. So there are 2 million engineering positions. The United States has 4% only. So that's the thing that I'm telling you about. So we have to do a lot of work in making more engineers. China has 34% of the engineering workforce of the world because they wanted to do it and they wanted to manufacture. Engage to Excel is again a White House driven initiative. It says that we have to produce 1 million additional college graduates with degrees in STEM. So that's a big initiative that's coming out of the US government, but it's still in the white paper format. It just came out in February 2012. So you look at this, and we will be watching this particular initiative, look for funding to promote more students to engineering degrees. So this is my equation of continuity of STEM jobs. If you want to progress, you either import talent, get people from outside, or you create talent, or export jobs. So this is what's, so we also destroy some talent too. There's some of the balloons are also being blown up, and the destroying talent means you are talented, but you don't study, you don't want to work anywhere. You have a talent, but we are not utilizing it. But you are all here, we are creating talent, so that's a good thing. So therefore, sometimes there are questions about whether we should give H-1B visas to people coming from outside. Well, if we don't have enough of our own, we'll have to import talent. So we are not opposing importing talent. We have done that in the past. It has given us good results. Now, for all that, I suggest to all educators, there was some question how to engage young people into engineering and sciences. So my suggestion is create a roadmap-driven education system. For example, the semiconductor industry has a roadmap called International Technology Roadmap for Semiconductors. It's available online. Anybody can look at it. So when you look at this roadmap from 1995 to 2030, where the technology is heading to. So when students come to my program, I tell them, today you are here, tomorrow you will be there. So when you graduate, supposing I teach you 22 nanometer transistor today, when you graduate, it will be 10 nanometer. So what skill would be required then? So we start importing them in our classroom. So it's called roadmap-driven education. So tell students, this is what life will be 5 years from now. This is what you have to learn today. So this is a roadmap, for example, from Department of Transportation has this roadmap for high-speed trains in the US. Nobody has seen this roadmap in classrooms. And if you really explore this, Department of Transportation has this roadmap. Now, they say by 2030, they will have all these lines of high-speed trains in the US. Now, where are the engineers to do that? Which particular university is really teaching students how to build a high-speed rail network? So that's why if we look at these roadmaps, we have to put the seeds today in our classrooms, that this is what US should look like by 2030. So I'm surprised that why not so many universities are opening the advanced rail type of education system, because once we teach them, they will make them. So that's the thing. There is a roadmap from energy, starting from building efficiency, liquid fuel consumption, carbon capture, smart grid, and nuclear energy. We will be needing STEM workforce. That's where the million workforce is required for the future. There's a roadmap for grid 2030. By 2030, there's a national vision of interconnected grid all across the US. Now, to make this grid, smart electrical grid, we need advanced conductors. Who's doing research on advanced conductors? Superconductors or some, again, we have to talk about that. Who's working on electrical storage, sensors control, distributed intelligence, advanced materials? So all this has to come in the education. Then we have a lot of data coming out, exabyte amount of data. We have to store, compute, communicate. So we need very, very advanced IT sector of education. So what we do at RIT in my program, we also have a roadmap of our education system. So we sit down as a faculty, we say that, okay, this is what university labs are doing, industry is doing. Of course, in a university lab, how can you do very expensive things? But still, we have our roadmap. And our program started in 1982. We were starting with just small 3-inch wafers, and we could only make one type of device, a P-channel MOS transistor. So we started working towards, every year we increase in our curriculum new devices. We started to increase wafer size, and we started to increase our lab, and industry kept us giving us their tools. So if we are serving them good students, they give us tools, we improve our labs, and they get a very highly trained student. Plus, we have a mandatory co-op program. Our students go for cooperative training. So that also helps them to get, first we look at what life will be to work in Intel or what life will be to work there. And sometimes they get permanent job offers, even during co-op. Many of our students get job offers while they are on co-op. So what we do is, we never had PhD program up until 2002. So how did we do research without a PhD program? So we did research through senior Capstone project. So we tell our students, you do research on develop this process, okay. Develop how to grow high quality oxide on silicon. So a student did the project, we got the curriculum enhancement, and we fed it to graduate research. So I would say that we made graduate research through undergraduate research, not the other way around. So we talked to our students, develop a process which graduate student will take it on to thesis. So that's how we do that. We also looking at the pipeline, and we're working with some community colleges and some agencies, community development agencies. How do we ensure a pipeline of good students to local US industry? So this is my flow diagram. We want to get students from community college. Let's say if I get community college student today, in 2 years, I will send that student to co-op, mandatory co-op to 2 years. So that means that student, if we transfer in after doing all the math and science courses in community college, you come to us, we'll give you a few courses, then go back to Intel or IBM, then come back, then go back to, so this way your financial burden is reduced. You work and you study. We take K through 12 teachers, we bring them to our fab, we give them some course. So the teachers and guidance counselors, we should talk to them and tell them importance of engineering. And this is how this whole workforce will be met. Now the question was, Dr. Ravindra told me that I should talk to everybody that how did I come to engineering and what challenges I had. So I put this small flow chart of how I came to engineering. So again, if I tell you the years, I risk disclosing my age, but that's okay. So I was growing up in India during when India was going through tough times. I born and raised in New Delhi. We had a war with China, a few wars with neighboring country, Pakistan. The economy was bad. The Cold War was on. We were not allies. We were supposed to be non-aligned country, but there was big influence of Cold War. There were tough economic times, and women were generally regarded as economic liabilities, and that's true even in many societies, even now. So the seed was placed by my family and teachers that if in the future life will be hard for you, it's better that you should be economically independent. And the only way you can be economically independent is be in science, because at that time it was thought that the word is science is taking over the whole world. So support by family and teachers was very, very important. So I write my flowchart as desire. The first thing the student should have is desire. The second important thing is support, which comes from family and teachers. And then incentives. So incentive came in the form of scholarship. Government of India announced National Science Talent Scholarship for students coming to sciences. There was a competitive exam that I took, and I got that scholarship to do doctoral studies. And while I was doing that, so I wanted to look at the field, how do I go to my mouse is where? Okay. Is it touchpad or is it a touchpad? This one, right? Okay.
We can touch this one too.
I want to go here.
Oh, sorry.
This thing. Just click on this.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Well, if it plays. Well, the sound is not there. Don't worry about it. So while I was thinking about choosing a major, I was in school at that time, and the voice of Neil Armstrong saying that the eagle has landed. Our family was circled around a vacuum tube radio, Voice of America. We were listening to it. Oh, man has landed on the moon. And the one statement that my family gave, look, US is going to the moon. You are still stuck in stupid things that you are doing here, you know, something like that. So that prompted us, look where the West is going. So the inspiration came from the West and the US that I took up the physics as my major. And we had a very visionary scientist in India called Homi Bhabha. He started atomic energy program in India. So I happened to go to atomic nuclear reactor to do some experiments. So I had summer experience at every summer of my BS and master's education. And that gave me exposure to very exotic techniques at that time. I do crystal growth, I did X-ray diffraction, I did neutron diffraction, and I do nuclear magnetic resonance kind of experiments at Tata Institute of Fundamental Research. So that, I think this model we should copy. We should get students, ignite the desire, make sure that parents and teachers support them. Family support is very important. And then we give them incentives. Give them scholarships, incentives, and give them exposure of research to different universities, different national laboratories. About time we bring Bell Labs back and all the national labs to full. So I worked for my PhD, I worked in a national physical laboratory. It's located in New Delhi. It's a research lab dedicated to maintaining standards, something like NIST you have in the US. So I worked on manganese zinc ferrites. The manganese zinc ferrites are magnetic materials which I use in telecom and television communication as transformer core materials. And India was importing at that time manganese zinc ferrite from Germany. And it was very expensive for Indian economy to keep on importing raw material from abroad. So I was given this PhD topic, how can we build good high permeability ferrites from indigenous raw materials? So I started studying the effect of impurities on the magnetic properties, and I was able to create a material which can use indigenous raw material called import substitution, and that gave me papers and a lot of new insight into the magnetic phenomena. But once I finished that, my research, we were hit by energy crisis. So at 1979-80s energy crisis. So my advisor told me, so far you've been studying the effect of silica, which is impurity in iron. You reverse your problem. Study the effect of iron in silicon to make solar cells. So immediately my problem was turned upside down. So I started working on directionally cast polysilicon, and we made 10% solar cell in a lab that looks worse than our garage today. It was leaking, it was bad, we were still able to make 10% cells. And that progress later on led to India being pretty good in solar cell technology right now, because there was emphasis on that field. So while I was working on solar cells, I came across University of Florida's program on alternative energy technologies that United States Agency for International Development invited me to come to Florida to do a training in alternative energy program. Then I was offered a postdoc position there. So I started working on nickel and gold films for packaging integrated circuits. So that took me to semiconductor industry. By that time, President Reagan took over as the president. The USAID money for solar was done. So all the workforce in solar cell moved to semiconductors. So I moved to, I had a lot of knowledge on polysilicon, so I went to polygates for the MOS technology. So we went to semiconductors. And that took me the job to Florida State and back to RIT. So the lesson learned from all that is, first of all, willpower conquers. So that willpower comes from you within. And another most important thing I want to say is opportunities don't come with bells and whistles. They just look like work. You never know today's work will be a big opportunity tomorrow. Again, do not give any consent to discrimination of any kind. Be persistent, patient, and optimistic, and evaluate your own assets yourself. Ask question yourself, will you hire you? Will I hire myself for this job? Am I good for this job? So that means self-assessment is very important instead of blaming always others. So choose your battles wisely, connect, communicate, and collaborate. Here I'm showing you, I'm collaborating with wonderful women engineers, Chris Campbell from Boise State University, Simone Raoul from IBM, and on the right is Archana, my student who just finished PhD. So we had very good time, we enjoy collaborating, and we have to seek out those collaborations. So more women come into the field, more collaboration they develop. In some ways I feel women communicate a lot better. We use that skill to our advantage. So image of engineering which is portrayed in books and is not the person who's driving the steam engine, or it's not a geek-like person. These are the engineers who are working. That's what the image of engineering. So I'm showing you some other pictures of my student, Fairchild. And here I'm working in the Brookhaven National Lab on a beam, synchrotron radiation beam, which is owned by a woman engineer, Jean Jordan Sweet. She owns a huge equipment. She knows every part of the tool in that machine. The way she runs, it's incredible. It's like amazing. I would call it superwoman of the Brookhaven National Lab. So that's the image of engineering. The engineers have fun too. This is a picture of my student, Eric Wang. He does breakdancing, he does rock climbing, and he also works in the lab, in the fab. So they have fun too. It's not that it's always a very boring life. They have a lot of fun. And the problem with our popular media is that we don't give good image, good exposure to engineering. When you see most of the shows, we show doctors and lawyers and forensics. We glorify them. I'm not talking about Jersey Shore, but most of the media always shows these kind of people in very, very great positions, and we look after them. But the only engineer on popular media is Homer Simpson. And so therefore, we have to bring MacGyver back. If you remember, I know, long time back. So we need to bring those creative engineers who solve everyday problems. So that means media has a responsibility here. I keep on telling, every time I go to IEEE, I say, why don't you talk to TV cable channels? Make an engineering channel. Make a channel where engineers are portrayed well, what they're doing in day-to-day life, what difference they make. We either glorify people who make a lot of money, we glorify celebrities, but there is never a news or who won the Nobel Prize on the first page. When I go to India or I was in London, the Nobel Prize news was the first news of the day, whereas not in the US. If somebody wins a Nobel Prize, it's probably on the 10th page in New York Times, or maybe it's in the popular channel, it's never a big news. So that's something that we have to bring back. So there are 3 C's word used by the computer industry: computing, communication, and cognition. How to connect computing with brain. Those are 3 C's. IBM has come with 3 I's: instrumented, interconnected, and intelligent. And we have come with 3 E's: educators, engineers, and entrepreneurs. So we have to bring them together to solve the problem of energy, food, water, infrastructure, healthcare, information, safety, climate, and art and culture. Imagine how much engineering goes in movies, art and culture. Imagine how much engineering goes in video games. It's amazing. So therefore, when you enjoy a video game, think of the engineers who sit down and make them. It's a lot of work they do. So I'll quote some famous quotes I like. Andrew Grove, former CEO of Intel, he said, "Your career is your business and you are its CEO." Just imagine you are CEO of your career. And a fundamental rule in technology says, whatever can be done will be done. And recently, I read a book from Reid Hoffman, the founder of LinkedIn. He says that permanent beta is a lifelong commitment to continuous personal growth. It is the mindset of every entrepreneur in life. We are all work in progress. We are never done. So that's what the permanent beta means. The beta means usually it's an industrial product which is still in the beta stage. It still has to be perfected. So we are all in that stage. And I'll conclude with that for teachers. Tell me and I'll forget. Show me, I may remember. Involve me, and I'll understand. That means we have to involve you in the projects. And then the Chinese proverb, give a man a fish and you'll feed him for a day. Teach a man to fish and you will feed him for a lifetime. So that's very important for educators. But the last quote is just for humor, because it comes from a person, Mrs. Indira Gandhi, who was India Prime Minister for 17 years in 70s and 80s. And she was Chancellor of University of Delhi, and I received PhD degree from her. So she said that there are two kinds of people, those who do the work and those who take the credit. Try to be in the first group, there's less competition there. That's what she said. So with that, I thank you and best wishes to all of you. Any questions? I'll entertain. Thank you. Thank you.
If you want to take questions, I'll go around with the mic. Anybody's got some.
Hi, that was a nice colloquium. Thank you very much. So my question to you was, you said you got involved in engineering because your family kind of encouraged you to, and also you heard in the news about America going into space. But my question is, before your family talked to you, what was your interest in? Were you always into sciences, or did you have other interests and hobbies that you wanted to pursue further?
It's a very good question. Thank you. When I was in, as far as my memory goes, when I was in grade 2, grade 3, I'm one of 5 siblings, so there was a domestic competition between my brother and sisters, or some of that is. So early on, emphasis on mathematics was one thing that was implanted by my parents, especially my father. So being good in math was considered to be a very good thing at that time. So naturally, when you are young and you want to prove your worth, you want to be boast of yourself. Every child wants to show that he or she knows something. And so if I didn't know my mathematical tables, I will not be giving. So initial bar was, am I good in math? Am I good in writing? Do I get good grades initially? So once you get to that level, then you start to compete with your students in your class. So therefore, you want to do well. You want to approach to your teachers. So I think that challenging kids early on is a good idea. Of course, I don't believe in pushing them too hard, giving them still freedom to think, and exposure. So making us read newspaper or encouraging us to read the news, what goes on in the US, what goes on in the West, teaching history during what happened during World War II, what happened in Hiroshima and Nagasaki. So those are the dinner time discussions in our family. So when you involve your children in these kind of discussions, then their curiosity develops. And therefore, that takes you to, if you want to be successful in life and economically independent, you better take a career that interests you. But interest in physics came from primarily my teacher. She was actually, my chemistry teacher gave me my interest in physics, because once she said that ultimately chemistry is nothing but physics when it comes to atoms, So that was interesting. So I would say that interest in science comes from if the scientific achievements are discussed at the dinner table. If we are discussing only sports at the dinner table, then of course, these ideas will never come to children's mind. So exposure is really good, and that helps. And once I came to physics, at that time, the jobs also were sort of declined in India. Many people told me to go for administrative services, sort of like go to civil services. But by that time, my interest in physics had become so hard that I didn't give up for civil services. So went to do my PhD. So I think but you can always change your path if you feel passionate about it. That's what I would say that. I mean, there's nothing wrong in being a history teacher or a history scholar, because we do need people in arts and sciences. After all, when you go for seeing good movies, you say good writers. You want good writers too. So it's not that the life is sum total of every discipline. We need good writers, we need good musicians, we need good sports people, but for all that we also need good engineers. So it's kind of We have to balance our life. So whatever you feel passionate about it, if you're dedicated, you'll achieve it. Thank you.
I have a question, actually. I could ask. I guess I could ask one, although this is an open-ended one. You won't be able to answer it. One of the things I've been reading about recently actually goes back to 1997, a vision of the future world, which has a kind of a fortress world in which there's part of the world that has the high-tech vision that you laid out from IBM and other places, but that's become a kind of fortress, and a rest of the world that is, whose quality of life is drastically designed and doesn't have access to that technology. Do you ever think in terms of how we can prevent that from happening?
Yes, very good question. And I often think about that. When I talk about the last decades, what happened was the research and development resided at few locations. And those locations kept on getting the pull from around the world. So I would say the high-tech workforce became a sort of cloud of its own. It never descended down to a person on the street as much as it should have. The reason for that is we compartmentalized production from R&D. So we say that when some item becomes commodity, we outsource it. So we did bridge the R&D with commodity production. So there are two separate silos. You make something, you outsource, it's made somewhere else. So that way, if I invent something here and I employ people from my community, then we're part of it. So that's why that silo disconnected it. So it seems that we'll have to keep some R&D and prototype production in our backyard for that. So for example, when you go to old towns, when you read history about Detroit, about Binghamton, when a shoe factory came and then another factory came, all the workers were in that factory, they all would talk to each other, they would socialize with each other, so the whole community was part of it. When Kodak was developing Rochester, the whole community was part of Kodak. Now, if Kodak has sold its digital camera business outside, and then community has lost their connection. So the best strategy would be that we should expect from Apples and IBMs that you have something to give to the community also that gave you so much. So that we invest in your community. And that incentive has to come from all sides, from us, from government, and from industry. So that's why we'll bring everybody with us together.
I really enjoyed your comments.
Thank you.
But I'm also struck by a recent report, which is not news, from ASE, that the number of PhDs is clearly dominated by non-US born students in the United States. And that's been the way it is for a number of years. And in some areas of engineering, the vast majority of PhDs are not US born.
Yes.
So we've got a problem.
Yeah, that's true. That's a very serious problem. And you know what causes that problem? What's the main root cause of that problem is that if you look at the undergraduate education around the world, it's expensive in the US. And when a student graduates from American university in the US, the average debt is about $20,000 for undergraduate, about $44,000 for graduate student. This much debt, if you have, will you go for PhD? Whereas everywhere else in the world, undergraduate education is subsidized. So they don't have debt to pay. They can afford to go to graduate school for PhD. So when all these big universities get grants, so they can hire as many students as possible from abroad, because our domestic students have to pay off their bills. And they have, so therefore, that's one reason that we don't attract them for another 6 years of PhD. If you look at the paper last year written by the PhD Factory, and many students feel that doing PhD does not give them a return of investment because the number of academic jobs have gone down. So how many PhDs you will be able to place? So it's a dual-edged sword. There was a time we have decline in national laboratories. Like Bell Labs used to hire so many PhDs. We don't have that. Our national laboratories are not as many in number as they used to be. So therefore, the number of jobs for PhD reside only in the R&D sector in the industry, and industry is going abroad. Intel has and IBM, they all have research centers in Bangalore and Shanghai, and they get PhD students from there. So that means we are competing in terms of resources, competing in terms of talent, both. So the best bet would be we should infuse more engineering education, engineering science, STEM education in the US. So then there is a supply and demand question. If there are more students here willing to take PhD, we should take them. So again, these problems all have some work to do for us. That's why things to do. Even though National Science Foundation says that you should hire a US citizen when they give you a grant, but they don't mandate that, because sometimes we don't find students in our own home country interested in PhD. They rather do MBA and go for Wall Street, because that was glamorized for some time. So now not anymore, I guess. So maybe we'll get more into engineering now. Thank you for your attention. Thank you.